But what we're going to be talking about today is the integration of email and social, obviously a very hot topic. And we're going to do our best to try to move the conversation forward into the future. But first I'd like to, if we could, actually, where's the clicker?
You guys not like red or lights.
All righty. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Chad White. I'm the research director at Responsys. I'm also the author of the Retail Email blog. I'm also an email insider columnist. And actually, I'm really happy. I got two other insider columnists up here, which is fantastic. Very quickly, I'll let folks introduce themselves. Maybe we'll start over here. David?
Hi, I'm David Baker, and I got introduced earlier. So I'm the Global Product and Solution Vice President for Acxiom. And prior to that, I lived in the interactive space, helped start up a few companies. And so it's been an interesting transition over the last few months.
Hi, my name is Mark Schmulin. I'm the General Manager of Social Media for Constant Contact. In my previous life, I was the CEO and founder of a company called Nutshell Mail, which was designed to be a really simple way for small businesses to manage their online and social presence. In short, it's a social media monitoring tool, and we were recently acquired by Constant Contact back in May.
Good afternoon. My name is DJ Waldo. I'm the Director of Community at Blue Sky Factory. We're an email service provider that I learned today does not compete with StrongMail. And so my job is to manage all the social media internally for our clients, for our team, and also externally help our clients decide how they're going to use social media. And I tend to do a lot of presentations and talk and think a lot about what we're discussing today about how to integrate email and social.
I think we have some great folks coming from at email and social from different points of view, so it should be an interesting conversation. But first, I want to talk about where we've been. Email social integration 1.0, what we're calling is community links. It's links at the top or the bottom of your email, just telling people how they can follow you on Twitter or find your Facebook page. So that's 1.0. Sort of 1.1 is sort of dedicated emails, banners that do a better job of saying why you should become a fan, why you should follow, what that interaction is going to be like. ESI 2.0 is share with your network links, SWN links. And also in the last one, 75% of the top online retailers are including community links in their emails. As of August, 26% were including SWN links in their emails. I think that by the end of next year, we'll go over the 50% mark. So again, this is sort of an established technology, even if the adoption rate on SWN is not massive yet. But you'll see SWN links, again, sort of treated very much like community links in many cases, included at the bottom or top of an email. The more sophisticated sort of 2.1 implementation is including it in the body of the email, sort of a strong secondary call to action. Works really well with sort of friends and family promotions. So that's where we've been. What we really want to focus on is where things are headed. And so part of what I think is sort of the 3.0 implementation are things like Sephora does, and I think Sephora does a really fantastic job of integrating email and social. And so you'll see right there where they have a social call to action. It's a conversation call to action that's integrated into the body of the email where they're talking about all these new products, and they want to hear from the community what they're interested in. Also, pulling tweets, pulling wall postings into emails. Retailers find tremendous success with using product review testimonials in their emails. This is something that's really just starting to happen, but certainly is part of the 3.0 movement. And then lastly, spring check-ins, which was really huge over Black Friday. Huge in a nascent way, probably about 5% of major retailers were using this sort of a check-in strategy. But it was, but bear in mind, it's, up from like nothing. So Black Friday was, a lot of people were trying out in-store check-in promotions. And some of them were really interesting. The Sports Authority example, they would announce, you would check in, you'd be entered into a sweepstakes, and if you won, they would announce you over the PA in the store. So you're getting the people in the store involved in, you're opening up their eyes to this online component that maybe they weren't aware of. And then REI tied it into sort of a charity effort where they donated money based on how many people checked in at their store. So, other retailers, check in, you get a percentage off or $1 off amount. These guys had a little bit of a different twist. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And again, I think this is very much part of the 3.0 experience. So I just wanted to sort of set the tone. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about, that and into the future. And now I'd like to talk to our panelists. And the first thing I want to know is, what other things have you seen recently that are in this sort of 3.0 vein in terms of email and social integration?
Sorry, the versioning kind of conjures up a different view. I was talking with a guy the other day that's been married 4 times. And his view of the world was wife version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. So I have trouble with the transition to versions. But, and I think some of the brands that focus on travel and existing redemption and so forth have embraced this better. I mean, Southwest, for instance, Virgin, Pink, Victoria's Secrets, some of the huge brands who can create scale around how they engage. That's kind of been a shift for me. I see smaller companies. I wanted to poll this audience before we started. Do you want to poll them, or shall I? Because we had a bet.
Yeah, no.
How many people in here actually manage a P&L that includes social media? You owe me a beer. I said that probably less than 7 of you would have your hand held up. The reality is, I live in a solution role. So we look at platforms, we look at services, we look at how we coordinate this. And every company that I've talked to in the last year and a half that's doing anything progressive around social media is challenged with the coordination of it. And I think us as emailers sitting in this room, we struggle. I mean, realistically, there's 3 incentives that you can apply to a consumer, right? You have tangible rewards, direct response, coupons. You have the vicarious rewards that I think social media propagates. How do I live through my friends, and aggregation of gaming and shared experience. And then the last are what events you create that are individual rewards. And some of the brands have done it a much better job, but to be honest, I don't think anybody's done social well. I just talked with some data providers, and there's a huge enterprise movement around how do we measure and mine unstructured data. It is not a marketing problem, guys. It's an enterprise problem. Unstructured search, social media. I mean, the amount of data that we're having to compile and react around is kind of like the Viking boat with a bunch of big guys on one side and a bunch of guys like me on the other. Kind of runs around in a circle. But it's different.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to attribution, and I think that with social media marketing, we don't fully understand the ROI behind it, and so a lot of us are skeptical about the benefits of it. But we do know this, that what our consumers say about our brand matters more than what we're saying about our brand, and this is nothing new. Today, consumers trust what other consumers say more than what the brand says. And when we think about what social media marketing is, it really is about word-of-mouth marketing. And we look at Facebook. Why are people on Facebook? They're there to connect with friends, but they're also there to discover and share information. They're not necessarily there to interact with the brand. But what we need to tap into as marketers is the fact that these are great referral networks. And if we can find a way to get our consumers to share our message with their friends, then we will see social media marketing helping us to acquire new prospects, helping to bring customers back into the store. So what we're seeing more and more at Constant Contact in particular is the social call to action not being secondary, not being the footer, but being the primary call to action within the email newsletters, getting people to come not to the website necessarily, but to the Facebook page where they can share their feedback, where they can engage with us, where they can learn more about who we are as a business, the people behind the business. I think our customers are starting to recognize that what's important is why they're in business just as much as what it is that they sell. And that's what the social consumer responds to today.
I've got a 3.0 example. I got this email recently, and for those who don't know, I'm a big fan of I kind of gave up 2 years ago drinking, sorry Fred, the Port 25 sponsored bottled water. I just stopped drinking that water, and so I've now drink out of containers like this. And this is a company called Hydro Flask, based in, I think in Oregon, somewhere in Oregon. And they recently sent me an email. So I don't know if this is 3.0 or more like 2.45 or something, but they sent me an email, and it was like you're talking about, Mark, completely dedicated 100% to pushing me to their social network, and in this case it was Facebook. But what I thought was really neat about it is, you know, we've seen some examples of incentive, of you get 50% off this or that. Well, what they basically did is they had one call to action with 3 different categories, and the first category was if they were to get up to 300 followers on Facebook, everybody would get 10% off their next purchase. If they went up to 500, everybody would get 15%, and I'm kind of making these numbers up, but something along those lines. And, you know, over 1,000, everybody would get 20% off. So what I thought was kind of neat about it was it gives you, not only gave me incentive to then go and become a friend of theirs on Facebook, which I did immediately, but then it was somewhat like that Groupon model a little bit, where I then went and said, I posted on Twitter and I posted on Facebook and said, hey, I love Hydro Flask, you should too. I think it was a little more witty than that. But something along those lines where they're actually using email to drive me to their Facebook page to get more fans. Now, what were the additional fans going to do? I don't know. I mean, maybe they were going to, you know, eventually buy a product, like it, and then continue to talk about it.
But they recruited you as like a community advocate to recruit friends.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a story very similar. This sort of group deal trend is really effective. We have a customer called Dingo Bones. They sell dog treats, and they just started using Facebook this past summer, and they had around 300 likes, I think fans, likes, whatever we call it today. And they wanted to get some more, they wanted to get more. And so they ran this really creative campaign where they said, hey, if you help us get to 5,000 fans, we'll give everybody a $20 certificate towards their next purchase at Dingo. And what was amazing is how they integrated email and social to drive fans. And so they sent out an email campaign to their list. They had around 9,000 subscribers on their list. And they went from 300 likes on Facebook to 5,000 in 3 days. And that was really impressive. They used the email as the call to action because that's where their audience was, but they wanted people to engage with them on Facebook. Now, that's a soft metrics. How many people like you on Facebook? How many people are commenting on your post and liking it, sharing it with their friends? How does that translate into hard metrics? And during that month that Dingo ran that campaign, their same-store sales, or their online sales as well, cumulative, went from 11% as their steady rate to 22%. And of that growth, 45% of that came from new customers. And what was interesting is, yeah, this was a campaign, there was incentive, it helped drive more sales, that's pretty obvious. But what happened afterwards, what's really interesting is what Dingo did afterwards. This is a place where people who love their dogs and pets congregate. It's like the new Dogster. Go to facebook.com/DingoBones, and everybody's up there sharing stories about their pets and videos because Dingo's asking, and Dingo's showing that they care. And so they're creating this community that sort of creates this human connection between Dingo and their customers. And what's interesting, in the month after this campaign, their sales have continued to grow around 17%, up from their steady state of 11% before they started using social media marketing.
I think it's evolved. It used to be kind of brand was a hero, and that's how a lot of catalogers and so forth. It's evolved to where brand is a platform now. So everything that we're doing is about aggregating communities. I think you mentioned earlier, or Morgan, you may have, when you were talking about the transient nature of social networking sites, and Rapleaf is a good example of how there were 144 data elements available a year ago. Few people aggregating social network sites, behaviors, and only about 15 of them were actually actionable in terms of scoring and real-time works. But we've evolved, and You know, I see so many enterprises that are under-muscled in certain areas. Voice changes. Before I left Razorfish, we did an analysis of a major retail brand. I won't throw it out or you'll tweet it. But they had 1,000 Facebook sites. Pages, 1,000. Can you imagine how you would govern that over an enterprise? Marketing purposes, customer service purposes. It's an enterprise problem that I think we're coming from the bottom-up direct response world. We're evolving into the moderated world of listening. It's kind of gone from what we think is dialogue and direct response to, unstructured real-time intent and understanding how that intent is a point in time. I think social media will be funded around episodes. It won't be a constant. How many of you all have joined the Facebook page and liked it and become a fan and haven't been back to it in 6 months? So email becomes a very critical component of keeping people aware. It's the only pervasive element of the life cycle out of all the channels, aside from maybe Starbucks, where the store would be persistent. But I'm telling you, this episodic view, I liken it to like the Miller beer commercials. At one period of time, they had the beer run. How many remember that? Nobody remembers the beer run during the football commercials where you'd run. But it was episodic. It was intent around a 3-month episode. Facebook will be reinvented over and over and over by brand and by context and by episode. And that's how people will find it relevant. Otherwise, you're going to have guys interviewed on the streets that will say, don't bother me through Facebook. But one thing we have to keep in mind is, social consumers, you have to remember how we form bonds within social networks. They're very sensitive. And if brands interfere with that bond, you'll disintegrate the social bond in that network. So as fast as the social networks and genre-based networks will form, they'll disintegrate if we don't influence it properly at the brand. So it becomes very interesting whether you create a platform and they come to you, whether you intermediate somebody else's platform, and so forth, and how we evolve and manage it over time.
I'd like to go back to what you were talking about, the brand as a hero, because that really resonates with me. I don't know if any of y'all have seen the TED interview with Simon Sinek, is that his last name? The author of Start With Why. Because we saw in the past consumer videos, people were talking about Apple. Why was it all about Apple? Is it because Apple makes really cool phones and computers and whatnot? If you go watch this TED Talk, it's really, really inspiring. Consumers today want to do business with companies that stand for something. There was a survey that Brian Solis talks about all the time. Why do people like a company on Facebook? And it should be no surprise, around 48% of the respondents said because I want to get deals and promotions, etc. That's obvious to everybody in the room. But 1% more, 49%, said that they like a brand on Facebook because because of the affinity. They feel something, they feel connection to that brand. And that really is what social media is about. It's about humanizing the brand, showing that the people behind the products and services that are being offered. And when that happens, when you get people to know, like, and trust you, they start talking about you. They want to be your advocates. And that's so important because what your consumers say about you is more important and more effective than anything you can say. And that brings me back to content. At the end of the day, content and context are king. And I think what we're going to see within email newsletters going forward are providing content that's going to resonate in a human way to create that affinity with a social call to action to get people to share information with their networks.
Yeah, it's all about relevancy and content. I felt